Thomas, the man is on fire.
Yes, he is, Betsy. And we predicted he would be. Remember August 15th, when the eclipse, 0-degree eclipse over America, we predicted that from August 15th until January 31st, everyone would take out their flamethrowers and try to burn up Donald Trump. And they would inadvertently just make him happier than he could ever be. He loves the fire. He comes out of the fire the winner. Has anybody noticed him losing in any fire in any deal that he's done?
No,
since
not
he's come
yet.
to president.
No.
No, he's a winner. And so what we get is, because we looked at the astrological birth chart as well as the astronomy, as well as the heliocentric and the sidereal and the tropical aspects of Donald Trump's chart, which we have been noted for doing with past presidents and being quite accurate, we predicted that this would happen. And we said that everyone around him would just get rattled and shaken, and as they were caught by their own guilt, looking in the mirror of the Donald Trump effect, that they would see their own guilt, and then they would become very nervous. And it was an analogy we made to a captain in a ship who is so filled with rats that his cargo is going bad, so he sets a smoke fire in the hull, and all of the rats come running out. That's what's going on, but he's not going to be burned up.
Well, Thomas, we do get comments sometimes under our YouTubes and then also from our website, aimfortruth.org. And one person wrote me and was very disheartened when they listened to a popular alt media yeller, that we all know who that is, who said that Trump will be assassinated in 2 weeks. He was very distraught about this. I did answer him. But can you, other people may have that on their mind, that they're very concerned about his safety. What say you?
I can't imagine anyone yelling louder than they did at first that they were going to kill him, and people actually stating they wanted him dead again and again and again. And those thought forms went back on the people who said them. So whoever this yeller is you're talking about, that person better be ready, because the Trump effect will come back on them. Trump is not going to be assassinated in the next 2 weeks.
I don't think that they meant it in that they wished it upon him, that it was their fear. And that is something that we can talk about, is why people have fear, doubt, and hatred at this point in time in our evolution.
Well, that's another aspect of the Trump effect. He pulls them to the edge of what is normally what we would call materialism, and then on the other side of that, morality. You see, you can be a moral materialist like Trump, or you can be an immoral materialist like the people that we've been calling out and revealing through all of our intelligence reports. So when this happens, the Trump effect creates the threshold. The threshold is considered a burning ground. You have to cross the burning coals to cross the threshold. Now, we have mentioned this before, and it's a great topic that needs a great deal of explanation for people to understand what this threshold is and why at this time in human history, not only just political history, but human history, we have crossed the threshold. And what we're seeing is the very, very ugly, ugly parts of ourselves that we can't carry into the world that is not physical. There's an invisible world. Call it what you want. You're there every night when you sleep. But you can't carry your immorality into that world. If you do, what happens is you have nightmares and you can't sleep. And people who are guilty have trouble sleeping. Donald Trump sleeps like a baby. They have tried to burn him with every accusation known to mankind, and none of them have affected him at all. As a matter of fact, the people who've accused him, those very same forces have come back upon them, and they've been shown to be who they are, the very criminals they're trying to accuse Trump of. So what is going to happen? We predicted this before. He is the phoenix. This is a 500-year cycle. America is about to be reborn, but on a new level. This is the Second American Revolution. America had been taken over. And what's really funny is the following. The recent executive order, which basically tied up every single loophole that could possibly be covered by any of the, what we'd call deep state or the corporatocracy, the evil warlord bankers and brokers, whatever you want to call them. Trump wrote an executive order that closes all the loopholes, but he started it off calling it human trafficking and pointing at human trafficking because of the great work that Ivanka has been doing in the West Wing. Remember, this is January, the month that we're supposed to focus on human trafficking, and Trump just wrote an executive order saying everyone involved with human trafficking and every other type of crime. I'm coming after you. I have a list of 13. I've seized all your assets. I have a list of 39. And now he didn't tell who the 39 were, and we're seeing the rats jump off the ship.
Now, this isn't the first time that a president has named January the month of human trafficking awareness. Obama did it as well. And that kind of piques my curiosity. If we were supposed to have this awareness in previous years, what has been done about it? I mean, will Trump now take this seriously and really help to educate a lot of Americans who do not understand the worldwide pedophilia rings that are out there? Will this be the month this year that people start to wake up to this?
Well, Betsy, through our previous conversations that Ivanka started this some time ago. And since then, there have been more arrests for human trafficking, sex trafficking, and pedophilia than in American history. Obama, yes, last January said it was the month that we should pay attention to this. When he was in office, the last January he was in office. But what did he do about it? He did one sweep of America a year. But he didn't arrest the hundreds of people in the State Department that were already found through a CIA and NSA entrapment program on the dark web, where they put up pedophilia sites, and as soon as the people gave their credit card numbers, they collected this for about 2 years. And at the end, there were hundreds of people in Hillary Clinton's State Department, and some of them are still there. There were hundreds of people at the Pentagon and throughout the military worldwide. Actually, there are many more than hundreds. They're still being prosecuted. So what we see is that what Trump has already done is he has swept up more people for sex, human trafficking, and trafficking for labor, and also pedophilia than actually in a long, long, long time, probably the most in history in just the last year. So what we see is he has now called a war against anyone who does that or supports that. As we had said before, when he put his hands on that globe in Saudi Arabia's terrorist awareness center, he said, and then he came out and he spoke to the Arab nations and he said, I'm not basically going to do any more business with anyone who doesn't stop terrorism. So recently he stopped a $255 million payment to Pakistan. Because why? They have had blatant human rights violations in just the last few months, and he is basically saying that's $255 million I'm holding back because I now, as the president, get to review the fact that Obama was giving you $1.1 billion to Pakistan. Pakistan has 10,000 madrasas that are training radical Islamic jihadists against America. And yet they're our friend, and Obama gave them $1.1 billion, and they have the nuclear bomb. So what is Trump doing? He called out with his executive order, and he is not afraid of the fire. Look how big this is. He called out with that executive order the United Nations and basically said, we're not giving you any more. He did this before the executive order came out, but he already took action.
And there are people from the United Nations that are on that list of prominent CEOs who've stepped down.
The United Nations is filled with criminals. The United Nations was to be the home of George Herbert Walker Bush's New World Order. And it was almost accomplished by President Barry Soetoro, Barack Hussein Obama. And we can go into that and the way that the UN equipment is in America and the way that Rahm Emanuel has turned Chicago into the murder capital of the world, actually worse than Iraq, and done nothing about it, absolutely zero about it, except to point out when there might be a shooting that someone didn't like, but not if it was a shooting of a policeman. You know what I'm talking about. So Chicago should be in a state of national emergency. That is one of the reasons that Trump declared a state of national emergency, because there is so much crime going on at all levels. His executive order covers every single crime imaginable and everyone connected to those crimes. So what is happening? You now see him calling out in his tweets in the last few days Iran and saying basically saying that they're on his hit list, and that's it. He is going to stop Iran because unfortunately Obama gave Iran a blank check, $150 billion, lifted the sanctions, and gave untold amounts of money in every currency that Iran wanted it so they could support Hezbollah, so they could support Hamas, so they could support Hamas in Palestine. Notice Hamas has left Palestine. Notice Hezbollah is backing out of Lebanon. Notice Hezbollah is backing out of Syria. Why? All because Trump has called them out and said, I will not do business with anyone with these civil rights violations, especially human trafficking or any type of terrorism, whatever type of terrorism you want to call it. So you are seeing the entire economy of the world contract because behind all of these people, behind all of these crimes are people who are connected to the big banks, to the big brokerage companies, to the big corporations. So you now see 250 CEOs stepping down from some of the largest corporations in America. Why is that happening? Because they are not only guilty of their sex crimes and their predatory sexual behaviors and their pedophilia and their theft and every other thing that has been
corruption,
unbelievable lawlessness.
Bottom.
Obama said, watch me. I'm going to be completely lawless and bomb 7 countries and kill 2 million people, put 56 million people into the refugee status where literally 4.5 million people have come up missing, in other words, human trafficking, because of Obama's illegal bombing, and yet the Congress allows it. The FBI doesn't care.
Well, they're all blackmailed.
The CIA doesn't. Nobody cares. Lawlessness of Obama was unfriggin' believable. Trump had to come back in and reiterate that we are going to follow the rule of law. This is causing people like Eric Schmidt, people like Bill McNabe from Vanguard, Eric Schmidt from Google. They're stepping back into lesser positions so that later they won't be culpable. Good luck. That isn't going to work. Now you hear QAnon. You hear everyone out there talking about Guantanamo Bay is being filled, all these planes coming in, the planes being turned around in the sky. Heavens, yes. The 13 people that he already nabbed all their money before he put the executive order out to make sure he got them. Those are the big ones that were so criminal that no one can, they will never be contested. The money he just seized, he will then put into the U.S. Treasury. And instead of like what Obama did, Obama turned around, gave it to the Treasury and gave it to the Department of Justice, and they gave it to, that's right, liberal-leaning, progressive, democratic, non-government organizations, which were also supported by George Soros, the Tides Foundation, the Open Societies Foundation, the Ford Foundation. The most incredibly criminal political maneuverings going on in this country were supported by Obama because his lawlessness set the standard for everyone else. So all those CEOs that we're naming, just look into why they're leaving. None of them really have a very good story. Look at the 56 senators and congressmen that are leaving. That's because the fire that they tried to use in impeachment nonsense with their big flamethrowers shooting at Trump have set them on fire. That's what's going on. Not only is Trump a fire-breathing dragon who is creating executive orders that are even tighter than the attempted coup of America through Obama's executive orders setting up Hillary Clinton to be really a ruler. Because let me explain something. It's almost a joke. It's almost a parody. It is hysterical to me that what did Trump do? Declared a national emergency. That means all of the executive orders for the 8 years that Obama twisted up to give the president extraordinary martial law powers beyond ever in any country's history were all set up through that and the National Defense Authorization Act, giving the president all this power to bring the military in. That's why he was able to bring in the United Nations equipment in every major city in America. You would think, oh my, this is a coup. No, Trump can use that. He can actually use the equipment that has been brought in illegally because Obama allowed it through the NDAA, saying that he could not only activate the UN in America, but he could also use the Department of Defense in America against Americans.
I mean, really, if the UN was doing anything within American boundaries on our soil that wasn't on the up and up, we would simply defund them.
That's what he did. He looked at the United Nations, and I'm so glad he did this from day one. When he became elected, I think even before he got in the White House, he said further, in the second he got in the White House, he said it very clearly, I am defunding the United Nations by half as soon as I possibly can. And everyone freaked. Even Nikki Haley went out of her mind, pulling her hair out of her head. She couldn't understand why he took a flamethrower to the United Nations.
Well, now you don't know that, Thomas. Were you there looking at Nikki Haley having a fit?
She actually did have fits on, which we saw in the news,
Okay.
when she was yelling at Trump, saying that she did not support his ideas and that absolutely we are not defunding the United Nations. And now she's proud that she worked to defund it $285 million herself by just looking at the budget. Now let's look at the way the United Nations works. They tell us that our dues is anywhere between $3 to $5 billion a year. Lie. That's our standard dues. That's not what we pay for the bill that comes for peacekeeping. That's not what we pay for the bill that comes from the World Health Organization or the World Trade Organization or the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund. These are all separate payments. And the biggest one of all, which ticks me off the worst, is the payment of billions of dollars. I forget how many, $4 or $5 billion just last year, for refugee resettlement, which actually the United Nations doesn't do. They turn around and they give it to the Catholic Church and other organizations in the nations where there are refugees being held in camps. And then they turn around and we pay on top of that, when refugees come into America, 189 different, basically what they are, or they use the name of the Roman Catholic Church, but they're fronts. And we pay 189 of these fronts for the refugees who come into this country, billions of dollars a year. So when it comes down to it, what he has recently done by saying that he is not going to fund the refugees, he's going to fund our own. And then he just recently took $25 million and gave it to this to support this executive order to stop human trafficking in America. I'm sorry to have to say this. If you haven't read, you will be shocked by what I'm about to say, but you need to read our intelligence reports that show that the number one human trafficking going on in America is through our refugee program and through the Department of Health and Human Services. That's where most of the 800,000 people who come up missing disappear from. And to put it in perspective, there is no federal agency for missing people.
Well, that would get in the way of their profit making.
Yes, I assure you that $25 million is going to create a federal agency to look for these missing people, because anyone could find where they're leaving from, where they're going. We can name it. We can point it out. We pointed out in a recent broadcast that they go through Atlanta. They fly out of Atlanta, Georgia. This is so well known that it's disturbing that no one has done anything about it in the government.
Okay. Well and good, but I want to go back to Trump is on fire. I want to hear the good news, Thomas. I want to hear people are saying that once we get these criminals rounded up and thrown wherever they're going to go. Oh, by the way, and if they run out of prison beds, I got an idea. First, get all the illegals out of our United States prisons and send them back home. That will free up a third of our prison space. And if you still don't have enough capacity, then let the folks that are the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, let them be in those freedom boots. Use the freedom trackers. That's what they're called. I think it's a wonderful way. It's sort of like one of those boots you put on a tire on a car that's parked, in a city street, and it's going to be ticketed and towed away. So just put a boot on them and let them go in society and do their thing, but they'll always have their boot on. Oh, anyway, that was just my dream, but I want to hear about the new American Renaissance. This is what people are saying is going to happen, because once you take our tax money, pull it back from all these nefarious activities, well, that's got to lower our taxes, Thomas, and it's going to make us more prosperous. And then if you take $1 trillion and you pump it into American infrastructure, that's going to be jobs for people. That's going to be better roads, better schools. I find this extremely exciting.
You nailed it. It's a new renaissance. But it's not a renaissance in Italy. It's a renaissance here in America. And it's going to take capitalism and turn it from immoral capitalism to moral capitalism. That's what Trump is. Trump is a guy who was raised in the shark-infested realms of New York City. There is nothing worse than that on the face of the planet. And he survived. He got through, and he's clean. He was investigated by the FBI. He's been investigated by Fusion GPS. Everyone investigated him. The Bilderbergers, everyone tried to find a weakness before he was elected. They could find none. He is the egg, you see. And when he was elected, the egg cracked open, and now the fire that is burning is turning him into a full-size phoenix that is impervious to fire and then becomes the new icon for the next 500 years. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be the new icon in America for 500 years. I'm stating that type of morality, because of the fact that so many of these people are showing who they are because they got too desperate. Whatever you want to call them, the elite, the deep state, the
swamp,
the Rothschilds. Right. I call them by name. I call them Comey. I call them Mueller. I call them McCabe. I call them by name, and I like to point out the information that is indictable, because we want these people to go ahead and think that they're going to get Trump. And go ahead, the person who's yelling and screaming about Trump. It's not going to make any effect. What has happened is history is moving. And it doesn't matter whether the polls show it or not. The vote showed it. The support shows it. And the fact that 250 CEOs are jumping ship shows it.